Hello and welcome to Overcome a Mental Health Podcast, a place where you can share your story and be yourself. I am very excited about tonight's guest. I am speaking to Tzara Attwater. She is a relationship development coach. And let's just get right into it. I'm just going to let Zara tell a little bit about herself.
It's wonderful to be here, Travis, and a warm welcome to all your listeners. It's one of these things I say. It's wonderful to be sharing heartbeats with people because our heartbeats are the only currency that is really important, right? And so what we're choosing to spend our heartbeats on is of value. So lovely to be here and sharing heartbeats with you.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. So, why don't you just get us started?
Okay, yeah. So, look, I'm a relationship development coach. And what that means is that I really look at anxious attachment styles or attachment styles in general. And so, for any of you listeners out there that aren't sure what attachment style they have in relationship with other people, I've got a really beautiful, fun little quiz, which I'm more than happy to send you the link to so that your listeners can take the quiz and just to determine what kind of attachment style they are. And that generally will be secure, anxious, or avoidant. There is a sneaky little fourth one that came along a little bit later on, but just to keep it very simple, we'll just focus on those three. So I am an anxious attachment theorist. I deal with clients that are running this anxious attachment style and really help them break through those patterns so that they can become more secure in and of themselves and get into healthier relationships and putting themselves first more than anything else.
And how did you start your journey as a relationship development coach?
It's a great question. You know, they say that our mess becomes our message. And for me, I really wasn't aware of my attachment style. And we're talking a good 10 years ago now. And I was in what I believe to be a beautiful relationship. I always give the metaphor, you know, if you're really excited and you're about to go on holiday and you're on the aeroplane and you're drinking margaritas and you know your destination is going to be coming up soon and it's that perfect paradise. I felt like I had won the relationship lotto. I was on that aeroplane going to my ideal destination with my beautiful partner. But unfortunately, he was obviously on another plane going somewhere completely different with my best friend. I ended up walking in on them embedded together, which was an incredibly impactful visual. The betrayal on so many levels. And so, you know, to use the metaphor, it felt like we just lost cabin pressure and I just crash
Yeah,
landed.
I can't imagine what it would be like to get over something like that.
It was just I think there's all sorts of emotions that you know I personally went through, and the kind of clients that I help nowadays, and who realize the plethora of emotions, the guilt, the blaming, the anger, the stupidity that that we felt like that someone could assume that we were stupid enough to believe their lies and keep this story going for as long as it did, and just the ignoring of all the red flags because of the fear of not wanting to be alone, not wanting to be single, and that's the unhealthy part of the relationship that I was ignoring, and I was ignoring it through my own fears, and when I crash landed, if we'd use that metaphor, and I really hit rock bottom, it really felt like, you see people in hospital with broken bones and they're healing. When you go through a betrayal like that, there really is a significant trauma that occurs in the body on a cellular level. And it really does feel like you've been hit by a bus. But unfortunately, you can't see any of the broken bones and there's no bruises and there's nothing to sort of show the pain that you're going through. And that healing can take any amount of time. Some people don't get over that healing. It's always something that they hold on to because of the impact of being hurt. So that's really what I have dedicated my life to help women and men overcome that kind of trauma, to help them get their mojo back, and really give testimony that you can become secure, that you don't need these relationship dynamics to affect you for the rest of your life, that it's quite possible to become less anxious, less avoidant, and more secure in and of yourself, and to stop and break these patterns. And, it's also just, it is a gross generalization here that we're talking about betrayal, but to kind of, I spent a long time blaming myself, feeling like I was a bit stupid for not seeing these things. But it's to recognize in the situation what I was responsible for, and to not, there are two people here, so there's two partial truths, right? Someone is being, one might say, quite selfish in doing what they want to do, and I was also ignorant to what I was ignoring. I wasn't standing up for my worth. I wasn't articulating things that potentially contributed to the breakdown of the relationship. So it's about owning what you can and what's yours and letting go of the rest, blaming, and taking responsibility for that. So that's what I did. I got a mentor. I got some help because I kind of realized, well, I'm the single thing that's consistent in all of the situations that I'm in, right? And if it's not working, then I got to put my big girl pants on and work out what I've got to do here. And that's what I did. And that's how I became fascinated with attachment theory, and a plethora of other, like a lot of other different lenses as well, that look at human behavior, like the Enneagram, the integral lenses, the ACWL developments. There's all sorts of lenses that I use to help and help break down the kind of unresourceful patterns for my clients. And so, I hope that sort of sums
Yeah,
up
no,
what we're dealing with.
that's great. I love when people use their own experiences and their own challenges to turn around and help people. I just think that's like one of the best things.
Yeah. And so, I've got direct experience and, can really give testimony. If you're in a situation where, you might be, you're fearful of being single, you don't want to be single, and you might be putting up with situations that aren't necessarily healthy or resourceful for you. But because of your desire to not be single, you're staying in that kind of relationship. And I talk about men and women. I mean, I've coached men that have been in situations with women who are constantly cheating on them, and they're ignoring it because they don't want to be alone. There could be an age gap involved. There's all sorts of reasons why we develop the behaviors that we have. And for me, what a consistent pattern that shows up is this attachment style. So I'll give you an example, right? With someone that runs an anxious attachment style, they might be overthinking what the other person is thinking or feeling, right? Let's ground it in something super tangible. That if you're at work and your boss says, "Oh, Travis, come into my room. I want to have a chat with you." Now, if you're running an anxious attached style, you might start thinking, what have I done? What's he going to talk to me? What he or she going to talk to me about? Did I say something? Did I not get these figures in? So the thing to catch here is that the narration, the narrative, the story that you're telling yourself is that I've done something wrong, right? That's the immediate thing to catch, which is real classic anxious attached behavior. So the boss could be calling you in to give you a pay rise, could be calling you in to put you on a new project, or any number of reasons. So if you're creating the worst case scenario about something that's happening and making it about you, that's a classic thing to catch. The other thing is not being comfortable with space. And so if your boss has said, "Oh, I want to speak to you in 10 minutes," or given a time frame, and then he doesn't turn up, or he gets called away, or she gets called away on a different meeting, and that time frame doesn't occur, the anxious person will start to think, "Oh my God, they're going to fire me. They said I'd be there in 10 minutes and they haven't called me. What's going on?" Running all of this kind of narrative again. And so it's to catch when you're not comfortable with space, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, right? We're wanting to kind of close that space. And all of this is because of a fear of being rejected, a fear of being abandoned. And ultimately, it relates back to our experiences in childhood and how our primary caregiver gave us love, you know. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Mary Ainsworth study that was done back in the 70s.
That one I'm actually not familiar with.
Okay, so the Mary Ainsworth study was called the Strange Situation Study, and it's a fascinating study that she did in the 70s. And she basically, this is going to be a very abridged version, but she basically got mothers, caregivers, to bring their toddlers into a controlled environment, which essentially a room full of toys for the toddler to play with. And what they did was ask the caregiver, or the mother in this case, to leave the room for a few minutes and then to come back into the room. The study was on how the child behaved, how the child reacted to the absence and then the return of the primary caregiver. Now, the anxiously attached child became very hysterical. And when the mother returned, they became very clingy. They needed constant reassurance. There was this real fear that they were being abandoned, if you like. And then there was the same occurred for the avoidant child. And the avoidant child pretended like they didn't need any care. They weren't bothered by the fact that the parent had left or come back. But internally, what they were noticing was that the heart rate and the anxiety that was occurring inside was equal to the anxious child, but they just didn't show it. And then obviously we have the secure child who was quite comfortable with the parent leaving, was obviously aware that the parent had left, and was a little bit discombobulated, if you like. But they were able to regulate their emotions. And when the parent came back, they were quite comfortable in knowing that they got a hug, they got the comfort that they sought, and then they went back to playing with the toys. So there was a much more emotional regulation for the secure child. Now, what happens is that the child of the anxious the anxious child experiences the caregiver being sometimes there and sometimes not there. So there's an inconsistency that the child experiences. So sometimes with the parents giving them lots of love, and sometimes they're not. So the child can learn that they've got to earn their love. They've got to prove it in some way. And they fear this abandonment. They fear this rejection. They're constantly on high alert, feeling like maybe they've done something wrong. What can they do to get that love back? Because a child at a young enough age, I mean, let's agree, right, that your primary caregiver is your main source of survival. Without that caregiver, you're going to die. You're not going to be able to survive.
Yeah.
And so that child is learning that sometimes my caregiver is consistent and here for me, and sometimes they're not. And the child learns to blame themselves as a result of that. So now if you fast track back into adult relationships, that's how it manifests. So what's happening is the childhood wounding is coming up. If I don't hear from my partner, if he tells me he's going to be home in 6 o'clock and he's not, then I start to get anxious. I start to think I'm going to be abandoned. Was it something I said? Was it something I did? Because it relates back to this experience in childhood. And so, like, don't get me wrong. The reason that a parent, they did the best that they could. We all are doing the best that we could with the skills that we have available to us. But for a caregiver that is not being consistent, that might be because they're holding down two jobs, right? Or they're a single parent, or any kind of reason why that's actually occurring. So it's not to attribute blame here. It's just to recognize that these are the results of that. And as adults, we have a responsibility to heal that wounding so that we're not repeating those patterns. That was a lot for me to
No,
just
I think
say.
it's, I love stuff like that. It's just like, it just makes me think about myself and how my parenting, like I'm hoping that I'm not leaving any wounds on my child.
Yes. So
Children, I should say.
oh, beautiful. I think it doesn't matter what we do or don't do, as if you're a parent, that you're going to be gifting things to your child,
Mhm.
rightly or wrongly, and like I say, it's up to us as adults to be able to swipe what we want and let go of what we don't want,
Yep, I
and just
agree.
know that our parents are doing or did the best that they possibly could, 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's the good thing to take out of it is if you're doing the best you can, I think that's what counts.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
100%.
going back to relationship anxiety, what are some of the common triggers? Like,
Yes, so I guess there would be three things that I would deal with clients that come to me. The first would be the mind reading. That's making an assumption about what somebody else is thinking or feeling. So in the analogy that I gave about the boss, right? So the facts are, boss has called you into their room. They want to speak to you. Boss wants to speak to you. Everything else that you create around that is an unknown. It's not a fact. It's just a mind read that you're creating. And you can choose to create anything that you want. So I draw attention to, what are you telling yourself that's not true? And is that serving you? So that's the first thing. So that's about just catching any mind reading or assumptions that you're making, you know? And I will just caveat here as well that the anxiously attached people have an incredible superpower. They're super vigilant to any changes in the environment, any kind of physical changes or emotional changes. They're hyper vigilant to it, because that's what they learn as children to survive. They had to be very, very aware of what any changes in the environment. If mum or dad got upset, or they were tired, or they were grumpy with each other, the child really is highly tuned into those kind of changes. But as an adult, that's a superpower. But as I was explaining before, the it's all very well to see that change, but then to stop yourself from blaming yourself that it's got something to do with you, right? So that's where the mind reading comes in. So it's super important to just check in and work out, what do you actually know about the facts. And my key takeaway for any of your listeners, if you're experiencing that, would be to just ask yourself, what am I telling myself that's not true? What am I telling myself that's not true? And you'll probably catch all of the layering of a story which is about you in the negative, and just to let that go, right? So just to bring awareness to that. And then the second one would be about space, what I touched on before. So being comfortable with space. One of the biggest things for someone with an anxious style is this fear of being rejected. And so there is they're often referred to as being needy or clingy, because they need that constant reassurance. They need to be in close proximity to their partners, to the people that they care about, because if they don't get that proximity, they think that they're going to be rejected. There's this fear of abandonment that comes in. So the stretch and the really big developmental edge here is to really start being comfortable with space. And I invite people to, dip your big toe into that discomfort of creating that space. If you're sending, you want a response on a text message, and you realize you've just sent 10 text messages in the space of 5 minutes. This is about getting some space. Hold off. It's not just physical, it's mental and emotional space. Put your phone somewhere, put a timer on it, don't touch it, put a timer of 10 minutes on it, put it somewhere so you can't reach it. If you're in that kind of looping of, I need a response, I need a response, I need to get a hold of this person, and just see if you can regulate your emotions after 10 minutes, after 15 minutes. um, and that will help regulate and emotionally balance what you're experiencing. And then I guess it would be having boundaries, being able to set healthy boundaries, being being able to articulate, I get particularly stressed if I don't hear from you, or I get particularly uncomfortable and need to be reassured, and I'm working on this, but please understand this is what my boundaries are. And it's okay to set boundaries without the fear that you're going to be rejected. So those are the three things that I kind of would focus on first of all. So that's creating space, setting healthy boundaries, and stopping the mind reading.
I love it. It's all good stuff. Um, what are some behaviors from like relationship anxiety that people may do without even realizing it, that they may like be kind of stuck in?
Yeah. So it'd be like, yeah, the mind reading. It's just that looping. It's that idea. Let's say we have a thought, and the thought might be something simple like, I can't cope. Whatever the thing is, I just can't cope with this, right? And if we buy into that thinking, we're going to create this kind of fear, right? It's an emotional reaction to that. It's a type of fear. And then that fear is going to trigger a kind of physical response. So that might be a dryness in the throat, or knots in the stomach, or a tensing of the chest. That's going to create this physical response, right? When you get that physical response, it's a natural reaction to kind of go, oh, I've got to get away from this feeling. I don't like this feeling. Avoid it. Let's just like get away from it. And when that starts to happen, when you have this behavioral response, it's going to reinforce the original idea that I can't cope. So that creates this looping, right? And people can get stuck in this simple kind of framing, I can't cope, and that creates the anxiety. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
does
and
that
a
make
lot of
sense?
yeah, it totally makes sense. I suffer from bad anxiety myself, and I can say like it's pretty normal to get stuck in that loop. And for a long time, I didn't even realize that I was stuck in the loop. It was just happening.
Yes, because it becomes normal, right? Because when
Hmm.
you're living with that kind of level of anxiety or those kind of thinking processes for so long, you don't stop to question it. I use this metaphor. I call them lifts, but I guess you guys call them elevators, right?
Hmm.
If you imagine you're in an elevator, or a tiny, tiny room, right? And right next to you is a massive bully, really, really tall, kind of gigantic bully. It's only you and the bully in the lift, in the elevator. Um, and the bully's constantly telling you, you're not good enough. What are you talking to her for? She thinks you're stupid. What are you trying to do this for? You'll never gain anything. And this narration of, yeah, berating you for everything you do. If you stay in that lift long enough, you're going to believe what the bully's telling you, right? And what we forget is that we can open the door and walk away. We don't have to listen to that voice. And that's often what's happened for the anxiously attached. They've been living with that voice for so long. They're not sure about what other voice they can listen to, or or that there is a possibility they can just stop listening to this voice that's not helping them. And so it's just to bring awareness to those kind of things. Yeah.
And somebody who kind of has that voice stuck in their head, stuck on repeat or that loop, like what do you say to that person to kind of get them out of that mindset?
Yeah. So, yeah, good question, which is what I was talking to in the beginning, which is, what am I telling myself that's not true? Right.
Hmm.
And I know that, sometimes people say to me, oh, but, I have a little bit of judgment because it's a motivation strategy. It helps me become a better person. If I keep on regulating and keep on kind of questioning, is that the best that I can possibly be? It's a motivation strategy, which has merit. But when it's overly used, if you think of it in terms of like a muscle that we're going to the gym and we're super exercising this muscle of judgment, if you like, and that compassionate side, that compassionate voice, that one that is supporting of you, starts to atrophy. It's not going to be flexed. It's not going to go to the gym. It starts to die off. And so it's about having a natural balance, being able to see, Oh, yeah, okay. I'm judging myself again. That's all right. I don't need you today. You can just park yourself over there. I'll come back to you when I need you, and start giving yourself a bit more compassion, a bit more, of a cheerleader supporting you in your corner, because you don't have to berate yourself the whole time, and it's not always your fault. When we're in relationship with another person, there's two people, right? Two people have their versions of events, and there is a partial truth. I have a half truth, my truth, and Travis, you might have your half truth, all right? And that makes the whole. And it's about accepting the other person's perspective as valid for them. Yeah. And so it's just the same way when we're having that conversation in our head that, okay, what am I taking that's going to help me and support me in this situation? And if if I've got to go and speak at a public event and I'm listening to the bully telling me, oh, no one's going to like you, no one's going to be interested in what you're saying. How resourceful is that going to be for me in that moment? So I just kind of go, park it. Thank you. I hear you, but it's not resourceful right now. I'm going to listen to the other one that's saying it's not making it about you. It's you have a message that people want to hear, and go and share that message with them, because that's going to be far more resourceful for me in the moment.
Yeah, I have an interesting thing that my therapist has brought up once or twice. You referring to like the bully, whereas
Yes,
he's speaking to you. One thing that I do is he said, imagine that there's like a river or stream like in front of you, and
yes,
all this water, is floating by. And when you have that thought that is on repeat, get that thought out of your head and just throw it in the stream and watch it float by.
yeah, nice. Yeah, nice. That's a great one. That's a really good one. I get, especially with I'm dealing with clients that are getting out of difficult relationships, if they're having that kind of negative conversation in their head, to write it down on a toilet paper, the toilet paper, if you get a pen and write it on there, and literally take the toilet paper and flush it down the toilet afterwards. Like,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I love stuff like that. There's
yeah.
so many like different things that people do to like just get those thoughts out.
And, it's about future pacing as well. We
Mm-hmm.
have, like, if we're, and this isn't to negate anybody's trauma or anyone's past experience, but if, like me, you experience that betrayal, I'm not the first to go through that, and I won't be the last. But holding on to that pain and hurt is, it has a certain duration in the healing process, but if I continue to hold on to it, it's part of that unresourceful state. It's not actually doing me any favors. I'm actually building a wall around my heart, which is going to stop me from engaging in any other beautiful experiences in life, just because of something that happened 10 years ago, right? And so I talk to people and say, what's the best version of you? How do you want to show up? And people that are struggling with, I just want to be a nice person, but they're not really sure how to kind of step into that. I'm inviting you, and maybe we can do this now. Invite you to think about all the people that you really care about, all the people, Travis, that you admire in your life, like family and friends, everybody that you really kind of you're inspired by, that make your heart so full of joy that you can see all of these people around you right now in your mind's eye. Just imagine that they're all standing there in front of you, and I want you to imagine that they're giving you a standing ovation. They're all clapping. Yay, Travis, look what you've done. You've just done this incredible thing. And they're all giving you this standing ovation. And to step into, what do I have to be? Who do I have to be? How do I have to conduct myself in order to get that standing ovation? And it's a really, really motivating state to be in, when you can think, everyone's giving me a high five and wooing and
Yeah, that is cool. That's I was thinking, can we shift over? I want to shift over to like um, building self love. Like,
Yep.
is a lot of I think that being in having relationship anxiety, you kind of struggle with being insecure a little bit.
Sure.
You How do you start building self love when you're kind of in that uh,
Sure.
place?
Yeah, and it really takes, I would strongly recommend for someone to get a coach to really help them, because you only know what you know. You can only see what you know, and that's part of the ruminating that occurs. If you're only stuck with what you know, how are you going to break free or try on a different way of being if you can't even see that way of being, right? And I say to people who, this, like I said before, there's a healing that really needs to take place. I know for myself, I probably wasn't ready for coaching, straight after my betrayal. I needed to go through a healing process. And so if someone's coming to me as a coach, and let's say I'm teaching you how to play tennis, right? I'm a tennis coach, let's say. I'm not. I'm just saying for this metaphor. And you come to me and you're going, I want to play tennis. I want to take my game to the next level, but I've got a broken shoulder. I can't actually lift the racket. My shoulder's broken. I'm going to tell you to go and get some healing first. Go and get that shoulder fixed. Go to a therapist, a doctor. If we're using this metaphor, go and get a counselor. Go and see somebody who's going to help you just heal that. And then when it's healed, come back and I will take your game to the next level. You're going to have such a transformational conversation with me that, in an hour, you're going to be able to shift some mindsets that have been holding you back in a way that you can't imagine right now, because the pain of this shoulder is so great that you can't see beyond that. So there is some healing, and there's modalities and people out there to be able to help with that. And they're all valid and they're all needed and required, and but taking a coaching and taking a coaching pathway and being able to evaluate for yourself, with somebody who's designing and tailoring the pathway for you, is like going on the steroids of personal development. It's just next level. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know for me, I wouldn't have been able to get as far as I did without somebody to guide me. Like, I wouldn't say I didn't do the coaching side of things. I'm just talking about therapy in general. Like,
Right.
it's I needed to do one thing first, and that was admit that I have a problem, and then I like kind of set myself free.
Yes. Yeah. It sounds so simple,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really not.
It's it,
It's really not, because it depends on the kind of mindset. If you're looking through rose-colored glasses, everything looks like roses, right? And so if
mm-hmm.
that's the mindset that I'm confused why this stuff keeps happening to me, but you can't take responsibility for anything, then you're going to keep on looking at the world through those kind of lenses.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really interesting it's an interesting pathway, because I help people, men and women, find secure relationships, right? That's be starting with themselves first, becoming more secure in of themselves. Because what I found in the dating pool, and I don't know, you have a partner, don't you, Travis?
yeah.
Yeah. But if you're in the dating pool, if there's any single people listening, you might find that you seem to only be attracting avoidant people, or what they call emotionally unavailable, or anxiously attached, where they're clingy and needy and just wanting something all the time. And if you're in the dating pool, it can seem like the secure person who's like the golden goose of the dating world, they just don't exist. They just, where are they? All the good secure people are taken. And yet, statistically, and this is a gross generalization, 50% of the population, general population, are securely attached. 50%. So that leaves 25% anxious, 25% avoidant, right? And they tend to stay in the dating pool because the securely attached people are secure. They can self-regulate. They're great at managing conflict and setting healthy boundaries. And so they tend to stay in the relationships for the long term. So part of what I'm doing is, in order to make you more secure, to help you find that more secure pathway, is so that we can shift that balance, so that you actually become a secure person in the dating world that's going to benefit everybody else as well. And so to that end, I have created a kind of a book, a beautiful, I've called it 52 dates, 52 creative dates. That's one for every week of the year that you can go on if you're in a relationship. So you can, spice things up. So you're not just sitting in front of the TV, having dinner each night. This is a way of being able to mix things up and go on some incredibly interesting dates. And I've also got one called How to Meet Someone in Real Life. So if you're sick and tired of the dating apps, which I know a lot of people are, this is about meeting someone in real life. 52 different ways of being able to meet someone in real life. And so I've designed these books myself. I've written all the content, and all the photographs that are in these books I took on a solo trip that I took around Australia. So if anybody's interested in getting some imagery of Australia and some funny little anecdotes that happened to me while I was traveling around, I'll share these links with your listeners, and in the comments, if you want to share that with them, that would be awesome.
I'd love to share them. I think that's great. It's funny that you mentioned that you wrote a book with 52 date ideas, because my wife and I were like, we just need some new ideas to
Yeah, there you
we
go.
seem to do the same date
Same
like
thing.
every
Yeah.
time we go out on a date. And it's like, we need something.
I used to have this thing with my ex-partner, which was one of the beautiful parts about our relationship, where we would book a time, like we'd set a date. I'd say, right, it's April coming up, on April, whatever the date is, at 6 o'clock, it's my turn to take you out on a date. And we would only be able to tell each other the date, and they would be locked out. You couldn't book anything else. It was like that was the time and date that had been locked in, and you wouldn't know what was happening. The only thing you could ask is what I needed to wear. So maybe it would be a formal thing, or maybe it would be, put your tracky dacks on or something. And so we had the most incredible things, because it became a little bit competitive. Who could outdo the last date that we had on? And we went on hot air balloon riding, go-kart riding, horse riding on the beach. It was just the most amazing kind of things that we did. And just, it was a way of locking out the kids. Like, we'd get, someone to look after them if that was the case. And we would just commit to this one date, and we try and do it at least once a month, as a little thing. But
And that's really cool. I like that.
yeah, this
Just
is 52 ones for each week of the year. So you've got no excuse. You might not like all of them, but there'll be something in there that'll tickle your fancy.
awesome. And I have one more question about self-love here, or self-care. Yeah, I think, it's self-care. Um, what are some like practical habits, practical self-care habits that you can help someone feel more secure in themselves?
Be kind to yourself. Like, really, it comes back to, what are you telling yourself? To be really kind. There's a great little hack that I've shared with you about, the standing ovation, to give yourself a little bit of a pick up. There's also, if you're feeling like you don't have a voice, that you're not being heard, that there's a feeling like you're low in self confidence, and your self doubt's really taking a plummet. Just try and imagine yourself stretching, that you're getting taller and taller and taller, and you're breaking through the house, or you're breaking up and up into the clouds, and your head is up in the clouds. And when you can get that visual that you're high above everybody else, look down at the ground and see all the people running around like they're the size of ants, and to kind of start walking amongst things, that you're this tall, that doesn't matter what people are saying to you or what they're doing, they're just insignificant little ants this size of this, to help you just get back some of your confidence. That's a little ninja trick that we try. The standing ovation is another one. And if you're ruminating, if you're going over and over and over in your head about an argument that you've just had, and you just can't break it, you're trying to stop, and you'll go off and try and go for a walk or try and do something different, I always recommend just start talking out loud anything that you can see around you. So for now, I can see glass. So I say glass, keyboard, computer, just give the mind something to focus on, and give it a narration, a story. So just run on repeat. Obviously, if you can't say it out loud, then say it in your mind. But if you can say it out loud, all the better. So it would be chair, table, books, glass, and just keep on doing that. And eventually the mind will stop ruminating.
Yeah, I do something similar to that. And before bedtime with my kids, I have to do it quite a bit because it gets very frustrating when you have three young kids. And I remember one time, like I when I first started doing it, it was very obvious that I would like pause and like look around the room and look at the different stuff. And so I just remember my wife like giving me this like weird look, like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
Like,
right.
it's something I learned. Like, just let me do it for a minute. Let me cool my mind down.
Yeah, great, great.
Yeah.
It's a grounding exercise.
It is. It's great.
It's a really grounding, so it brings the mind back into the present moment. So what's happening when you're ruminating on the argument or whatever it is, you're not being present, you're not being here now. And so you might be in the past or the future, but you're definitely not in the present. So this is a really good grounding exercise. Wiggling the toes, focusing on the heartbeats to the breath, but that just talking out loud the things that are around you. It's a great little ninja hack.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions that I wanted to ask. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to bring up?
No, I think I mentioned my quiz. If anyone doesn't know what their attachment style is, I'll definitely send you the link so that you can share that with your audience. And it's just a great little fun. It takes about 3 minutes to find out what your potential attachment style is. And obviously, I'll share with your readers, just for being on the podcast and listening to this today, my two ebooks for you to spice up either meeting someone new or if you're in a relationship to just spice it up a little bit.
And then one last question I tried to ask every person I have on the podcast. For people out there that are struggling with mental health, whether it be anxiety, depression, or whatever, what advice would you give them?
Well, if we're talking about mental anxiety rather than an attachment
Mm-hmm.
style, I always ask people, and I'm going to ask you this: if
Okay.
you had to tell me, describe what anxiety is, what would you say? Describe
For
it.
for me, it's not knowing the future, kind of getting stuck on in a loop. Um, I think for me, those are the biggest things. It's like if not knowing the future, getting stuck in the loop, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Kind of being alone in a big crowd is a
Right.
huge one for me. And
Feeling
those
like
those are yeah
that you're the only one that's
yeah
experiencing it, right? Yeah,
yep
that's beautiful sharing. I love that, Travis. That's really hit the nail on the head. Um, so, as a simple kind of definition of anxiety, and it is very generalized, I guess, that
mm-hmm,
it's a what we're doing is we're thinking about a future event, which is what you said. We're thinking about the future event, and we're making that future event the worst case scenario, the worst case possible, and we're bringing that worst case scenario and letting it affect the moment right now. Okay, so I'm thinking about something in the future. I'm making it the worst. Like I'm going to start getting anxious that an elephant's going to come through this room, and I start panicking about the elephant potentially coming into the room, and I'm making that my anxiety now. So the thing that to bring awareness to is that it's a thinking process. All right. People don't have anxiety. It's a doing. It's something that you are doing to yourself, right? Through
mm-hmm,
thinking. And that's not to say that it's going to be easy to stop. But when you can bring awareness to the fact that this is a thinking process that I'm doing, no one's holding a gun to my head telling me to think these thoughts. I can have a choice about what I'm thinking. If you can bring awareness to that, you can stop the anxiety because it's a thinking, it's not a having. It's like, you know, I have colorblind, right? If I'm colorblind, I'm not. But if I had colorblind, I have colorblind. I don't have anxiety. Anxiety is a doing. Anxiety is something that I do. So if there was anything to help your listeners to empower them, it would be to bring awareness to that.
awesome, good stuff. I love everything like this. I just eat it all up.
Gorgeous. Awesome.
And where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, great question. So I'm my confidence coach. So that's the name of my website. So www.myconfidencecoach, all one word, .com.au, because I'm coming to you from sunny Australia. Not that it's very sunny here at the moment. We've just had a cyclone. So we've had a cyclone come through. But yeah, so it's www.myconfidencecoach.com.au. You can find me there. But also, if you want to grab a copy of the um, ebooks that I've got, then you can find my details in there as well.
Perfect. And I will have all these links in the show notes. Um, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tzara, for being on and being willing to talk and open up.
It's awesome.
Uh,
And like I said at the beginning, it's been an absolute pleasure to share Heartbeats with you. So thank you for joining and thank you for listening.
yeah, thanks to all of the listeners today. And you can find us on at Overcome Pod on Instagram and YouTube. And the best thing you can do for us right now is follow us, share our content, like everything that you can. Still trying to get our name out there, and I'd love all the help that we can get. And we'd love all the help that we can get. And thanks again for listening. Until next time.